Hello! I don't know what is in the air recently, but I've been feeling very redemptive. And so this video is going to be about 3 different brands that I felt kind of just meh about after my initial purchases, which includes Glamshop from Poland, Davina, and Pretties from Your Face from the United States. And so I went back and purchased some new shades from each of them. And so I wanted to give you swatches of the new shades I got from Davina and Pretties for Your Face, since I haven't done a dedicated video on either of those 2 purchases. And then I also wanted to tell you whether or not these brands have made it onto my loves list, or if their second chance just didn't quite go far enough to get them back into my good graces. So if you're curious for my thoughts on those 3 brands and you want to see some beautiful swatches, then go ahead and just keep on watching and subscribe. Right at the beginning, I will say I'm not going to be swatching the Glamshop shades because I did a full first impressions video on these. So if you want to see that, I'll have that linked in the description. But how we're going to be doing this is I'm going to be swatching through all of the new shades I have from these different brands. And then I'll give you my overall thoughts from each brand, whether or not I would repurchase. So I have not worn all of these shadows on my eyes yet. The Davina order is from here down to here. And this is something that my husband picked up for me. Then these Pretty for Your Face shades, I haven't tried all of them on the eyes either. I have had a few of these ones. I think half of them I've tried on the eyes, and about half of the Davina ones as well. And these Pretty for Your Face ones I did pick up myself, and I got them like the end of March, I believe. And you'll see I don't have them in my typical rainbow order. Instead, I've actually ranked them by ones I would purchase again down to ones I don't know if I would purchase again. So with that, let's go ahead and get into swatches. Even though I have them kind of in the order in which I would rank them, I actually am going to still try to swatch them in color order, so that way it's the best comparison wise for you all. So in the Davina order, it was labeled as like the multi-chrome madness bundle, and it was a set of 5 shades from one collection. So I don't know how to pronounce all of these, and I apologize if I'm incorrect, but let me know correct pronunciations down in the comments if I totally botch it. But up first, we've got Gallus. And so this is more of a red shade, and then it shifts to an orange, but you will see it's at the very bottom. And the reason for that is because these shades overall, I was not super impressed with. I find them dry, and I'm not sure if you can see, but they really settle into like the lines in my skin and in my eyes, and they don't have a ton of shine to them. They kind of have like a dustiness in a way. I do find that when I have my fingers slightly damp to apply them, that they apply better. But overall, I'm not super impressed with these 3, especially from that collection. This next one is the shade Immacity. And this, again, same texture issue. And my friend Riley from Seeking Shifts has a video going through all of her Davina shadows. I might do one similar at some point, but in that she has a full collection that is essentially these same shades but in a different texture. And she described these as each shifting like one color away from each other. So this one's like red and orange, this one's like pink and red with a touch of orange, you know, and they're all pretty similar in the shifts, but they're not exactly the same. And that's how this collection of 5 was as well. And I did also pick up the shade Starfire, which is from that other collection that I was just mentioning Riley swatching. And This one is sparklier, but I find that it still is kind of dry and crumbly and not super even on first application. You can definitely see it does have a little bit more of a predominant sparkle, but I'm not sure if I shift my arm if you can see that it's definitely not even on first application, and it does take a little bit of working with to get it to that really opaque and smooth finish. Smooth as in like continuously opaque. I mean, there is definitely more of a sparkle particle in here that is a little bit piecier looking, although not as sparkly as some of the others. This next one is Nakarat, I'm not sure, but it's from that same set of 5. And this one, I feel like has the least shift. It kind of goes a little bit reddish to orange, but that's the shift that this one does too, except this one goes maybe a little bit pinker, and this one stays a little bit more true red. But they're very, very similar. And you can see I ranked this one a little bit higher than these first two because it is a little bit more opaque on first swatch. So color-wise, next up we have one up here from their newest collection. This is the shade Frosty Surf, and this is one that goes, it's got a reddish orange base, and then the sparkle on top goes from a greeny gold to a very bright magenta pink, and it is a beautiful shade. I like it a lot. If I was going to repurchase, this is one of the ones that I would definitely want to repurchase. And this has an interesting texture in that it's got a very opaque base with a strong sparkle on top. It's a very small particle size sparkle, but it is definitely a sparkle that sits on top of that base color. And this is a formula that Davina seems to really enjoy because a lot of their shades have that really strong base pigment with sparkle within them, not like the base pigment is coming exclusively from the sparkle, if that makes sense. This is one of their standard shimmer shades called Diva. So with a coupon code, this one I think was $4.80 in comparison to all of the others that I've shown you so far have been $6.10. And I'm really impressed with this one. It's got a very solid color, no shifts or anything, and it definitely is like a metallic, but there are sparkle little like particles in there. And overall, I just think it's a very solid shade. You can see first swipe, it had a lot of pigment. It's consistent, and I think it's really good, especially for under $5. That's a pretty solid shimmer formula. So next, because of the base colors, let's go ahead and swatch to these two. So these are the last two from that set of 5 that was like right here. And this is the shade Pavonine. It is kind of standard kind of shade. It's got a deep berry base with a blue shift that kind of shifts pink. And do you see how it's like dry and crumbly? That's what I mean about these shades. I find that these two perform better than the others, which is why I have them kind of ranked a little bit higher if we're doing my ranking this way. But they're still not great, and I can see why they were discounted. The bundle of 5 was $25, which made them $5 each. But I still think that the formula is worse than like the standard shimmer shades that I have. This other one I think is called Thalassic, or at least that's how I want to pronounce that. I'm not sure if you can see though how these two, and really I mean Nakarat as well, or Nakarat, however you say it, these 3 are a little bit more solid. These 2 are especially just dry, and not even. And I feel like the same is true for Starfire, which is why it ranked lower than these, because even though it's got a little bit more sparkle in it, which is nice, it still is that same kind of texture, and I just don't find it very flattering either on the eyes or in swatches. And so what you see is pretty much what these look like on the eyes. I also feel like these ones have a little bit of stronger shifts. This one, it goes from orange to kind of red, but it's a pretty consistent color these two have a little bit more shiftiness happening. Although you can definitely see how none of the finishes that we have swatched so far are nearly as sparkly looking as that Frothy Surf shade, which is the type of texture I've gotten from all of the Davina shadows I've gotten before this point. Now let's go ahead and move into more of an orangey shades. So this is Centaurus, and oops, this is from the same collection as Starfire, but I find that this one is much better. So the color is kind of a like a neutral peachy orange that then shifts to a gold and green color. It's not a green, but it definitely is more of like a yellow gold or like an olive gold. And you can see those full shifts on display right there. But do you see how texture wise, like these are the same collection, but this one is just much more opaque right from the beginning, a much more even color throughout, and has much stronger shifts and sparkles. Like, I don't know what it is about these types of colors, but they just seem very dry from either collection in comparison to their counterparts with different tones. Next, this one's a little bit more brown, but I want to swatch it next to this so that way you can see and compare. This is the shade Sweetie Sunbeam, and this is another one that I feel like has more of a base color with a golden sparkle sitting on top of it. I don't see any shifts beyond that gold really. It gets a little bit more bluish looking, but mostly I feel like it's that gold that you see throughout the majority of it. And I'm not sure if you can see a difference, but these two shades, like I said, have more of a base pigment with sparkles on top, whereas I feel like Centaurus, the color is coming from the particles themselves and less of a base color. There definitely is still a base color in there, but it's less prominent than the base color in like these two shades. So I did also get one of the new multi-chromes. This is the shade Sila, I think is how you pronounce it. And this is a beautiful shade. This reminds me a lot of the texture of like the Terra Moon's multi-chromes. And it's got kind of an orange, like it's got a peach to a more yellowy orange to a yellow gold to a lime green, kind of like the color of my nails today. And it's really beautiful, very textured. And unlike these other shades, which again have a base pigment and sparkles on top, this is all sparkle. This does not have a base pigment, and you can really see all of those shifts. They're very beautiful and they're easy to see on the eyes. This reminds me of like Cosmic Collision or something of the like from Terra Moons. I really enjoy this shade. $17 is pretty steep, but I felt like it was a really unique color that I haven't seen before, and I wanted to try the formula, and I am really happy with that. I find that when I'm not wearing anything else and I'm just wearing this on the eyes, you know, it almost is iridescent in the way that like when I'm not hitting the light, it just kind of looks like my skin. But then that sparkle does shift and is very beautiful and like fairy-like almost. The only reason I have this one ranked as my third favorite is because of that steep price tag. I personally feel like Davina does iridescence really well, and that the price is very competitive for the quality of their iridescence, which is why I have those as my top two. But the multi-chrome is very, very nice, and hopefully that kind of gives you an idea of what it's like and how it performs, you know, in comparison to multi-chromes that have been around a bit longer. So I don't really have any yellows, but we'll go ahead and do Pancake Bubbles first. This one, again, has that base color with sparkles on top, but I find that the sparkles are a lot more subtle in this shade than they are in like some of these other ones like this or this. And I'm not sure if that's because of the base color or what, but I also find that there isn't really a ton of shift happening in this. I would say it's like a champagne gold kind of base color with a greeny blue sparkle on top. I think it's a nice shade, but I don't think it's like super revolutionary or anything. So that's why it kind of ranks a little bit more like halfway in comparison to some of the others. I still do like it though, which is why it's up a little bit higher. The only other gold-ish kind of shade I have is the shade Glitz, which is another standard shimmer shade. And this one, again, very consistent color-wise. I do feel like it's a little bit chunkier than this one up here, but it still is very nice, especially for being under $5 with a code. Moving into greens, let's go ahead and start with this one. This is the shade Rainbow Blossom, and I feel like this one has a pretty deep base color. I'm not sure if you can see, it's almost like a blackened base that then shifts from like an olive green to more of a tealy blue green. It's a pretty shade, but it's got that really dark base on it, which is why it ranks a little bit lower for me. Again though, still very nice. And this is one of those types where it definitely has a base with sparkle on top, similar to like this, and then this one as well, even though it's got a very light base. I think this is called Half Sea Fog. This is, again, another one from their new collection, and it's the only other new shade I picked up. This one has more of a like bright green apple kind of green, and it's got a pink sparkle with a gold sparkle as well. It's got a very beautiful, almost like multi-chrome finish, and other brands that have this type of shade do classify it as a multi-chrome, so I am really happy with the Davina price for this one. But I also feel like it's a little less like sparkly looking overall compared to some of the others with that like base pigment and sparkle on top formula, which is why it ranked a little bit lower. I feel like you can't tell on camera maybe quite as much, but maybe if I swatch it on my fingers. So let's do this compared to something like Sweetie Sunbeam. Do you just see how you can see the sparkle in Sweetie Sunbeam a lot more? This one you can see the shift more. This one you can see the sparkle more. I believe we've only got 3 shades left. So first up, we've got the shade Nerds, which I was convinced to pick up after watching Riley's video. It's got a light blue, kind of sky blue base with a gold shift. I almost find something a little bit green in this shade as well, depending on the shift. But I think that this is a really beautiful shade, and I say that as someone who doesn't like blues. But this one is much more opaque looking than the others. Even something like this, which is the Frothy Surf. This one, there's still like something a little sheer looking in the base when you compare it to something as opaque as Nerds down here. But for being more opaque, Nerds still has just as much visible sparkle in it, which is why I really, really like that one. And then last but not least, we've got the 2 Iridescents, which again, I really enjoy the Davina Iridescent formula. This first shade is Shuggies, and it's one that starts off green, but then depending on the light, shifts more of like a pinky purple. So you can see the green and then the pink kind of right there. It's a very beautiful shade. And again, for the price especially, such a good quality iridescent shade. Look how much shine and sparkle you get in that. But still, like, let me show you on my wrist where you can see it a little bit better. Nothing, truly nothing. And then all of that sparkle and shift in beauty. So really love the iridescence. Then the other one I got is Cake Bomb, which starts off as more of a silver and then goes to a blue. So you're going to be able to see the shift less in this one because it is just overall less shifty. But I knew that going in, and this was a shade that I really wanted to have. So really enjoy those, even though they're at the bottom of my swatches. I'm going to save my overall thoughts for each brand till the end, but these are all of the swatches, again, from Davina. And I would say that just in general, very different formulas, and be sure you know that going in. Don't expect the same thing, regardless of what you pick up, because they are definitely not all made equal. You can see Frothy Surf did leave a little bit of an orange stain behind, so keep that in mind. I'm always so bad about remembering to tell you which shades stain. But anyways, okay. So Pretties for Your Face is a much smaller order, and I'm just going to swatch these in order of my favorite to least favorite. Just because there are so few, I feel like you'll still be able to compare them pretty easily on my wrist. So first up, we have the shade Lilac Haze, and this is one I'm really impressed with. I really, really like it, although I will warn you, I am, as Teresa's dad would say, uncooked chicken color. If you are anything deeper than uncooked chicken, I think that the shade will probably appear dusty on you. And with that, let me finally swatch it. So this is a very light purple base with a strong golden shift. And I feel like the way my lighting is set up, you guys aren't able to see that purple quite as much. Maybe there you can kind of see that light purple base. But the reason I like this shade so much is because the shifts in it are very evident, and it still is smooth and shiny looking despite that. And so this one is one that really stood out to me as a favorite. Next is the shade Sweetness, and I feel like this one is more blue than I was expecting. I was expecting it to be a little bit more purple, but I would say it's kind of like an icy silvery blue, maybe something a little bit gunmetal about it as well. But you can see this one's very metallic, and it does have a sparkle throughout it, and that's why, again, I ranked it high, because I thought that the formula of this was pretty good. Next, we've got this shade Gina, which, if I understand correctly, is named after Teresa's cat, and so I'm going to link both the creator of this shade and Teresa's Instagrams down below. They're two of my favorite Instagrammers, so be sure to check them out. But I really like this shade as well. I feel like, again, it's got a very good formula. It's got a lot of base pigment with a shine on top that has kind of a duochrome going on. I would say that this is more of like a plum kind of base color, maybe a reddish plum, with then like a greenish gray shift on top. It's interesting. It's a really nice shade. I like it. I don't think it's quite like any of the other duochromes I have in this type of color story. Next is the shade Zabornak, which I actually had but broke, and I missed it enough to repurchase it. This one, again, I would say has the same texture as the ones I've shown you so far. It's very metallic looking, and it does have a nice shine. More shine, honestly, than maybe any of the others that I've shown you. Except, again, this one I feel like looks very shiny and is not looking quite as shiny as normal in the footage right now. Next is the shade Toil, which again I would say has the same type of texture. Maybe a little less shiny than the others so far. This one has a similar base color to Gina. It's a little bit more red than purple though, and then the sparkle on top is kind of like a silvery purple blue kind of thing. Next is the shade Calicore, and this one has a much flakier texture. Sorry, that's a cat hair, ignore that. But it's got a much flakier texture, and you know, you would think, ooh, that means it's really sparkly. But I find that it just makes it very dry and textured looking, but not necessarily more sparkly. There is a sparkle in it, but I feel like the more I try to smooth out that like flaky texture, the less I actually see the sparkle in this one. And so I don't love this texture, which is the same reason why Kitty is ranked a little bit lower, which again, a collab that I am here for and all about, but that texture is a little uncomfortable to put on the eyes. It's hard to work with, and I just don't feel like all of that reaps enough reward for it to be worth it. And then the last shade I picked up is Slimer. This is a very bright green, more of a green apple green compared to like my neon lime green nails. And it's got kind of a gold sheen on top, I guess, but I find that this shade is performs very similar to a matte, and if not a matte, definitely a satin. It's not metallic to me. And so here are all of those shades together from favorite to least favorite, and there are like consistent formulas throughout, and I have them ranked by which formulas I tend to like the most, but I find that it's hard to know what you're getting based on the information available, like what type of formula it's going to be. And I feel the same way about the Davina. And I guess that kind of leads me into final thoughts. Let's start with the one that we just talked about, Pretties for Your Face. I've tried Pretties for Your Face a few different times. Those 70% off sales always get me because it's such a good deal, $2 a shadow. But I will say I don't think I have any Pretties for Your Face shadows that are like my favorites, you know, with the exception of maybe Solstice. I really do like Solstice and Asteroid, but I feel like for the most part, their shadows are good for the price. And if I'm going to get a cheap shadow, like for the express purpose of it being cheap, I think I would rather pay $3 for Looksy than take the gamble with Pretties for Your Face, because I consistently enjoy the Looksy formula much more than I do the Pretties for Your Face. If I was going to recommend shades though, out of like what I purchased from this round, I would say you could cut off at Toil, and those are pretty good, but those last three, again, these are just a texture that is very dry and uncomfortable to work with, and I don't feel like this is a kind of flakier texture, but it smooths out easily and is totally worth it in the end. Whereas these ones, I don't feel like they are, as much as I recognize that they are made by creators who put their passion and heart into creating those shades. They just aren't for me. And so overall, I would say Pretties for Your Face, it's not a brand that I feel the urge to go back to. And I think if anything, I will fight the urge to go back to it based on the price tag, because I know that in the past I've used that to rationalize picking more shadows up from them. Although at the end of the day, I have such a large collection at this point that I don't think that the Pretties for Your Face shades are offering me something that I don't already have or just don't need and is taking up space overall. For Davina, I do enjoy some of the Davina shades, but then there are some that I really don't like. Like these two are, in my personal opinion, not good shades. I don't think that those are worth the $5 that they were marked down, let alone the $8 that they typically are individually. I mean, I know that Davina does have a lot of codes, which means that these are like typically $6.40-ish, but that is too steep too. And, you know, I've said this before when I've talked about Davina in the past, but I find it kind of hard to order from them because it's hard to know what's in stock and what's not, and when you can expect things to come back in stock. So I do feel like this time around I was surprised at how many different shades were in stock, but I still have a bad taste in my mouth from trying so hard to get these shadows in the past, and I feel like that does affect still my overall opinion, even though, you know, this time I was able to get most of the shades I wanted. Not all of them, but most. I would say though, I still am a little skeptical because some of the shades are very, very nice, but I don't know if I'm willing to take the risk because from here down, like these two are nice for the price, but I don't think like they're the best shadows I've tried, just period, no, you know, full stop. And so for half of my order almost to be shades, and I'm like, about, it kind of makes me nervous of like, do I want to take the leap of faith if there's a 50-50 shot that they won't be shades that I love? This is a brand that like, as new releases come out, I definitely will be like paying attention because the new shades that I did pick up, these three, are very nice. That multi-chrome is really, really beautiful and unique for me personally, so that's one I really enjoy. But $17 is expensive, and they don't use the coupon codes for those shades, and so that is something to keep in mind, and it is something that makes me a little bit more hesitant to use the brand when multi-chromes from like Glamshop are, you know, $11 USD when converted. And even like Shine by SD and Cleona, those are like $13 to $15, and so it just feels kind of steep. Another note on Davina is that for US domestic shipping, Davina is pretty expensive. It's like $10 for shipping. So that is another thing that kind of makes me hesitant to purchase from the brand overall, and kind of leaves me wishy-washy still on Davina. I'm not like firmly putting them in the no, I don't want to buy from category, but I also am not like head over heels in love with Davina, and like, you know, they just need a second chance and now they're my favorite. You know, it's not that for sure. But I do think that for that $680 price tag, or $640 or whatever the math works out to be, these shades that have like a strong base pigment and sparkle on top are really pretty. And if you can figure out which of those are these formula versus this formula, I do think that, especially for the $640 price, that's a pretty good deal for those types of shades, if you can stomach then the $10 shipping. Then lastly, that leaves us with Glamshop, which kind of got lumped in here so that way I could update you guys on my thoughts. I really love these Glamshop shades. I do find that some of them are getting a little bit of hard pan, but it's much less of the overall shadows than like my first order, which granted, I did get a lot more in this order. Really, the ones that I've noticed it on the most are this one right here, which I feel like is called Reserve. Reverse, sorry. This is the shade Reverse. And then down here, this one is getting it. That's the shade Mushroom. And I noticed it a little bit on this one, but not bad at all. And this is the shade Zigzag. But for the majority, I feel like I haven't really gotten hard pan at all. And some of these I've used quite a bit. Like this shade Kinda Posh I used on my wedding day, and I used it in a lot of trial runs up until that point. And it is like packed down more than it was when I initially got it, but it is not hard to pick up at all, and I feel like it performs the same. One thing that I did notice though after my initial video on this order that I want to point out to you all is that there are different pan sizes. So the Turbo Glows and Multi-Chromes are a like thinner pan than the other shades. I'm not sure if you can really tell the difference, but I swear it's true, and it's like consistently true. Maybe if I show you, maybe you can see how these ones just sit a little bit lower, and you can tell which ones they are because all of the pans are consistently lower than the others. So that's something that I thought was interesting. I don't know how much of a difference it really makes in this grand scheme of how much product you get, but I did think that was interesting. The Glamshop shipping, you want to talk about shipping. This shipping is like $30. But I feel like, honestly, if you were like, you can buy from Davina or Glamshop, I would pick Glamshop because I was consistently pleased with these shades, whereas these, I felt like it was much more of a gamble. I will still stand by the fact that I don't think that these have the most consistent formulas, although I did figure out that some of these were mislabeled on the site, and when you look at the back, like this shade right here, Purple Chakra, is considered an ultra pearl, where on the website when I purchased it, it was under the Glam Shadow category, which is how I was like doing the video. But afterwards I noticed the names are correct on the back, and when you see them like that, how they're labeled there, the formulas are much more consistent. Like you can even see looking at them, at least in person, like what formula is what. Like these are definitely all ultra pearls, whereas like these ones, you can tell because of the lower pan, are turbo glows. And I really do enjoy the multi-chromes I got. I still think though this one, Venomous, it's not a multi-chrome. It texture-wise is similar to this, but whereas like, you know, Sila from Davina has those really clear shifts, this one, Venomous, It has that same PC sparkle, but it just doesn't shift in the way that something like this does. I'm not sure if you can really tell, but that's my best attempt. But I would say texture-wise, these are more similar. This one is more similar, but something about the base is like grippier, and I feel like it can create a much more solid looking color than these two can. And the shifts in this one are very strong. I think that this is a pretty good dupe for Cleona Palace. And a lot of you on Instagram agreed with that when I wore them both at the same time. So that's definitely a winner. And this one is as well, although again, formula-wise, like the multi-chromes are the most inconsistent formula now that I've figured out the mislabeling issue. Long story short though, if we're sticking with the video theme of like, are these brands redeemed in my eyes? I would say Glamshop, for sure redeemed. I really enjoyed this order. I understand the different types of shadows a little bit more now. And I think that, you know, considering that they do sales so often, I kind of think of these shadows like permanently sale price because they do a sale, it seems like once a month-ish. So for the sale price, these are really good quality and it kind of balances out that insane shipping price. Davina, I'm still meh on. I know that for some people, Davina is like their go-to ride or die favorite indie shadow brand, and for me, it just isn't that, but I can appreciate that some of the formulas are really nice and that their prices are more competitive than shades like from Terra Moons, which can be similar in price, but don't have discount codes as readily available and as steep as Davina. And then lastly, Pretties for Your Face. I think I'm ready to accept the fact that I am just not a Pretties for Your Face kind of makeup consumer. And I know that some people do really enjoy the brand, but I'm ready to walk away from it and accept that this brand overall just isn't for me. No more redemption arcs needed. And so that's kind of where I sit. I don't know why the curiosity bug has bitten me recently and I've been wanting to go back and try these brands one more time, but let me know down below, what are some brands that you initially kind of felt in the middle about, and did you end up going back and loving those brands? Are you still in the middle? Have you decided that they're not for you, like for sure? Or let me know your thoughts about any of these three brands if you've tried them. Whatever your thoughts, leave them down below. I am pre-filming this video, but I am planning on getting married and going on a honeymoon and things, so I might be a little bit quieter in the comments for now, but just know that I do plan on responding and communicating with you all once the busyness of my life is done. And until I see you next time, I hope that you stay safe, stay healthy, stay happy. Bye!